Hello, welcome to what has become our weekly video series. So we talked to you last week just after the announcement that level 3 was on the horizon, and we now have a finish line in sight of next Tuesday, which is an exciting thing. What the industry has been lacking a bit of clarity about has been whether or not in level 3 real estate agents will be able to conduct private viewing. So while we wait for that to be announced, our own group of branches, Grey White leaders, have been coming up with some fairly strict operating procedures in order to keep people safe. So if we do get the green light on Tuesday, we can start showing and launching a lot of the beautiful homes that we have ready to go. But since nothing has really changed in our world since then, we thought it was fortuitous to get two of the best in the industry in mortgage broking and legal along to share their thoughts about operating in the new market. So we've got Bernie from the Home Loan Shop and Sam Walker from Home Legal joining us today. Hello. Thanks for being here. So really, we're going to hand over to you and pick your brains, because I feel like we've got a week and we know that we've got pools of buyers that are looking and very keen to get back out there as soon as they're allowed. But let's talk about some of the things that they could start thinking about and doing so that when they get the green light, they can come out of the blocks racing and be successful at securing property in the new market. So Bernie, I'll hand to you first, and really want to put to you is, you know, like, if I want to buy a house at level 3 or in the new market, is it even possible to get a loan?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's quite timely because we've had a lot of inquiry in the last few days at the Home Loan Shop as well about whether the banks are open for business and whether they're approving loans. What I want to do today is give you guys a bit of a snapshot in terms of what we're seeing from the banks in terms of their willingness to lend to home buyers, and also want to give the listeners a bit of an idea on how they can best navigate a level 3 environment when they're buying a house, so that they can give themselves the best opportunity to buy a property. So first thing I'll say is that coming out of lockdown, we've been transplanted into a new lending environment 4 weeks later from what we went into 4 weeks ago. First point I want to make is that it's important to say that the banks are still open for business and you can get a loan, but they're much fussier on what they're prepared to approve compared to what they were 4 weeks ago. So we've noticed that it's become much more difficult, but not impossible, to get approved for loans with lower deposits. So that's anything under 20%. We're also seeing that there's a bit of a reluctance to approve deals that have any reliance on overseas incomes, and some banks aren't taking on new to bank customers, so they're only approving loans for their existing customer base. The other thing that I think most people would expect to see is that the lenders are being really conservative around industries that are directly affected by the lockdown. So the obvious examples are hospitality, tourism, and accommodation. The other big change is that the banks are now putting a massive focus on what income looks like going forward as opposed to what it has been. So traditionally, if you're in PAYE employment, the bank will ask for your last 3 pay slips to evidence your income. They're now asking for, even for existing pre-approvals, they want letters from employers confirming what the income is going to be going forward. For self-employed customers, typically they'd verify their income with their last year's financials. Now they want accountants to do a forecast and put their eyes over it and give the banks a little bit more comfort around what the income look like going forward. The next thing I want to share is, what are the additional considerations that buyers might need to have in a level 3 environment, or if we move back into a level 4 environment. And there's an analogy that I've been using with the existing customers, and it's of a motorway. So prior to the lockdown, we had 3 lanes that were all open and traffic was flowing nice and smoothly. We then shut all of those 3 lanes during the lockdown period, and with the level 3 announcement, we're back open, but we're probably only open with 1 lane. So there's going to be a few choke points. If you think of a buyer's journey, they start with a pre-approval, they have a house hunt, they make an offer on a property, and they do due diligence with building inspections and limbs and maybe valuations, all the way to moving into the property and settling. There's multiple choke points that can now happen. Banks have diverted some of their staff into hardship teams to look after mortgage holidays, so they're taking a little bit longer to turn things around. There's a backlog of jobs for building inspectors, and I imagine it's the same for movers as well. So all of those things potentially can take a little bit longer. For customers, I guess the important thing to emphasize is that expect that that's going to be the case, but it's the same for everyone. So you're not disadvantaged with your particular situation taking a little bit longer than what it might have pre-lockdown. So with, sorry, Ben.
No. I was just going to ask Bernie, just listening to you talking. You just mentioned obviously they take a bit more of a risk profile. The banks, are they all consistent? Like, are all the banks operating the same way with their risk profile?
No, so they're general themes, and there are definitely exceptions. So a good example is that ANZ, who's one of the larger banks, they've got 40 to 45% market share. They haven't been taking on any new to bank customers, so that's a big segment of the market. And if you're an ANZ customer, that's great. But if you're not, that's an option that you don't have. But we are seeing that some of the other banks are still taking on new to bank customers. Another example is Westpac is approving everyone, but they've struggled a little bit with the technology piece. And people working from home and those things. So they're approving loans, but they're a little bit slower. BNZ seems to have pulled right back. I mean, that could change any day, but they seem to have pulled right back. And ASB's been business as usual and tracking on, but there are definitely exceptions to those themes.
Okay.
So what can I do to put myself in the best position to kind of offer when I need to, like, which could be next week, as early as next week?
Yeah, great question. I think the changes, as unfortunate as they are, brokers are in a unique position to help people navigate some of those potholes that I mentioned above. We've got a bird's eye view of what the lenders look like and their appetite for taking on new loans. So I'd encourage people to get in touch with a broker early in the piece. We're all geared up at the home loan shop to speak. We've been using this kind of video technology for a while. We can look at what people want to do, help them assess whether they've got the ability to do that, and if they have, we can help them get a pre-approval. If there's a bit of a gap between what they want to do and what they can do at the moment, we can help them build a bridge and see what the steps are to get them in the position to make an offer.
Brilliant. And thanks very much for talking about the length of time it's taking for people to be able to approve things, because obviously that's going to be really important when we're drafting conditions and the timeframes. There's kind of standard timeframes, but those might need to be extended. And so really this is where you come in, Sam. And I know in a lot of cases with buyers, you're at the end of the chain and you kind of get handed a successful offer. But I think probably now more than ever, it's really important to start talking to your professionals up front and make sure that you can offer it in a protected, as things change, which could be from before and back again, So engage in the professionals first. So start off, tell me what you've been doing during level 4 and how's that going to change as we transition into level 3 next week?
Yeah, hey, thanks, guys. Level 4 has really been a bit of obviously a big shift for us, like a lot of businesses. We've gone fully digital. We were in a lucky space where we were paperless or paper light anyway, so we didn't have to uplift boxes of our files and bring them home with us. But we have really we've got our whole team right from receptions, practice managers, and all our lawyers working from home. So everyone's available there. And what we've been doing during level 4 is getting our settlements done. Now, there's probably about half of our settlements have still gone business as usual, and the other half have been deferred until after this level 4's lifted. So they've had their own challenges. Each one's been different in dealing with people, making sure people can get their properties purchased or get their properties sold, which has been helping people financially as well, because often the delays or unintended delays have unintended financial consequences for people as well. So it's been helping out people with that. And also we've had a number of clients, some who have come through obviously from the home loan shop guys as well, who are refinancing their lending as well, changing banks. Which I know doesn't help the properties, but sometimes we had one client who was doing that to get in a position to be able to buy a property when they come out of lockdown. So we've been helping that, and we've been doing all that digitally and via video link and those sort of things as well, which has been really good. So level 3 now is obviously a new challenge and different changes, and we're really looking at people who are now saying, hey, look, I want to buy this property. Can you help us go through that process? We had 4 weeks. We probably only had 10% or less of what would normally come through in terms of new offers. But now, obviously, we're expecting that to ramp up now that everyone's been stuck at home and wanting to go out there and look at properties now, hopefully with real estate agents and put offers in. So, yeah, it's an interesting time.
Inquiry increasing as we, people get confidence and that we're heading towards the finish line. So what kind of advice are you giving people, with regards to offering in level 3?
So other than obviously our usual advice, which would be come to us obviously before you sign, or talk to any lawyer who you deal with if you've got an existing lawyer. And so that when you're putting an offer in, that offer is something which you're entirely comfortable with, and you're fully aware of everything in it. Now, Bernie talked about timeframes and banks, etc. So it's about, hey, look, you think your KiwiSaver is going to take 10 days to get out. A lot of those providers are now saying, hey, because we're working from home, allow at least 15 days. And everything's going to take a little bit longer. Council websites will probably say, LIM report takes 10 days. They've had dispensation from the government to take longer in doing that as well. So there's really a lot of things that I guess we can help clients with to say, look, just be aware that you need to make these changes in an offer so that you're in a best position to be able to meet those conditions and get a successful transaction out of it as well. And that goes for vendors as well. We're advising our vendor clients who've got properties on the market to say, hey, look, this is the reason why a purchaser might need longer. Banks taking longer, it's not because they're dragging the chain along. So it's about keeping both parties. We act for just as many vendors as we do purchasers, and looking after them, make sure they know what's being presented to them and what they're presenting to other people as well.
You mentioned the conditions, Sam. So obviously on the All Conditions Law Society agreement, you've got on the front, there's the condition boxes, which you can obviously refer to the general terms, or you can write them in at the back in the further terms. What's your take on that? And
that's a good question. Historically, lawyers, we've always been wanting to draft their own conditions because we're in the unique position as opposed to real estate agents where we've only really got one person's interests at mind. We don't have to look after both sides of a transaction. So we're looking at a vendor or a purchaser, and the conditions may be different depending on who we're acting for in terms of what advice. But it's about finding a happy balance between vendor and purchaser, something that's fair to both parties as well. So we would generally use the further terms of sale and override anything generally. And that be around your finance, your builder's report, your LIM report, and those sort of things. And then adding in conditions such as insurance, title search, maybe a valuation if that's what's required as well. So the reason I guess finance and valuation is some require on-site visits and some don't. So again, that's a different thing under the different lockdown levels. At the moment, the guidance we're seeing from builders reports is that they'll still go ahead. Valuers will be able to visit properties, agents will be able to show people through properties. So really it's kind of business as usual time frame wise and conditions wise. We just need to push out those time frames a bit. But in saying that, we also need to cover off, hey, look, what if it goes the other way? What if level 4 kicks in again? We're not going to say 10 working days for a condition. We're going to have a catch-all in there that says, look, if the level changes back to level 4, then that date will be deferred until a later point in time. Obviously, we hope that will never happen and we won't go back to level 4, but it is something that we kind of need to look at every worst-case scenario, unfortunately, as well, and cover that off.
I think that's really important because if you say that just the general terms inside the contract, it's very prescriptive in terms of the length of time, but what you're saying here is that obviously that has to have some flexibility because if we do change positions, you could obviously put, either the purchaser or the vendor in a bit of a difficult situation.
And so based on, sorry, Sam.
Yeah, I'd say particularly with when it comes to, there's still obviously anecdotally going to be a supply shortage out there of properties and people accepting backup offers and purchasers who contracts are falling over because they can't meet their 5 working day finance condition, which they didn't talk to Bernie about to say, hey, look, you need to make it 10 days. And all of a sudden they've lost a property as a result of that. So it's really about making sure everyone's in the game together. Your mortgage broker, a real estate agent, a lawyer, you might have a valuer on board as well. You might have your builder. Get everyone lined up. Make sure everyone's timeframes are realistic, and then you can go forward with that as well.
So now more than ever, it's just so important that you're engaging, mortgage broking and legal advice upfront so that you can move forward with confidence and protected, but also be successful in purchasing because no one is out there offering because they don't want a home. Everyone does. And I know Bernie and Sam, you've been really generous, offering that people can give you a call and pick your brains and get the process rolling so that people can offer with confidence in the new market. And I know that all of those things that you've discussed are certainly not things that I had considered. So some really great advice. So for anyone looking to talk to Bernie and Sam, I'm going to put their contact details into the comments of this video. And really great advice. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Really
good to see you. Stay safe.
See you, Level 2.